All right, let's dive straight into this explainer. Today, we're deconstructing the lie detector, unpacking the science, the deep, deep flaws, and the very strict legal realities surrounding polygraph tests in India.
Before we really get into the weeds, we gotta ask ourselves a pretty fundamental question. Can a machine actually read human deception? You know, it's a total staple of every true crime doc out there. But today, we're separating the Hollywood myth from the cold, hard science and the law.
Here's our roadmap for today. We've got 6 sections: the murder case hook, the anatomy of a polygraph, flaws in the machine, polygraph versus narco-analysis, the consent mandate, and finally, evidence and legal limits. Starting off with Section 1, the murder case hook.
So, looking at the recent investigation into the murder of Pune realtor Ketan Agarwal, the police hit a bit of a wall. To verify alibis and dig up some new leads, they actually went ahead and sought court permission to run a polygraph test on the accused, Celia Goyal and Chetan Chaudhary. It's a classic investigative pivot, right? And it thrusts this whole lie detector debate right back into the headlines.
Moving into Section 2, the anatomy of a polygraph.
Now, the concept itself isn't new at all. It actually traces all the way back to the 19th century when Italian criminologist Cesare Lombroso started measuring blood pressure during interrogations. Fast forward a bit to 1914 and 1921, and pioneers like William Marstrand and John Larson were already building early versions of the modern device. And you know, they were all chasing the exact same premise: the idea that conscious deception triggers distinct, involuntary stress responses in your body.
If you look at today's modern machines, they're basically tracking 4 highly specific physical markers. First off, you've got pneumograph tubes wrapped tightly around your chest and abdomen to track your breathing rate and depth. Then there's a cardiovascular cuff monitoring your heart rate and blood pressure. Third, galvanic skin response sensors, or GSR, are placed on your fingers to measure sweat and skin conductivity. And finally, a PPG, which uses an infrared sensor to measure variations in blood flow. Basically, the machine is leaning on all these biological tells to establish a baseline and then flag any sudden spikes of emotional stress.
So how does the actual test play out? Well, it happens in 4 distinct steps. It kicks off with a pre-test interview, mostly just to build a little rapport and bring down the subject's general anxiety. Step 2 is all about establishing that baseline, having you answer simple known truths. Step 3, that's the real meat of it. It's a structured, carefully crafted mix of irrelevant, control, and highly relevant crime-related questions. And finally, step 4 is the waveform analysis, where the examiner is literally scrutinizing the data, looking for the stress spikes that might hint at a lie.
Which brings us to Section 3, flaws in the machine.
Now, all of that sounds incredibly sophisticated, right up until we collide with the actual science. The scientific community remains deeply, deeply skeptical. In fact, a massive 2003 review by the U.S. National Research Council concluded that a polygraph's accuracy is, and I quote, little better than could be achieved by the flip of a coin. I mean, that is a staggering statement. It completely shatters that pop culture myth of an infallible truth machine, proving these devices are really just measuring anxiety, not truth.
Because it only tracks stress, the whole system is kind of fundamentally flawed from the jump. Think about it. An incredibly anxious but completely innocent person, someone who gets sweaty palms just getting a parking ticket, can easily fail. That gives you a false positive. On the flip side, a habitual liar or someone who is emotionally detached can breeze right through without a single physiological spike, creating a false negative. Plus, and this is wild, subjects can actually use trained countermeasures. We're talking specific physical or mental tricks to deliberately alter their heart rate and just totally fool the examiner.
Let's move on to Section 4, polygraph versus narco-analysis.
To clear up some common pop culture confusion, we've got to compare the polygraph with another famous and highly controversial investigative tool. With a polygraph, you are fully awake, consciously answering questions while sensors track your physical panic. Narco-analysis is an entirely different beast. It involves actually sedating the subject with a drug, usually sodium pentothal, to induce a hypnotic state. It's often called a truth serum, and theoretically, it neutralizes the subject's imagination, basically forcing them to divulge the truth. But keep in mind, neither of these methods has a 100% success rate, and both are hugely contentious.
All right, Session 5, the consent mandate.
Because of these massive scientific flaws, and honestly, the incredibly intrusive nature of the tests themselves, India has established some very strict legal boundaries. The major turning point came in a landmark 2010 Supreme Court ruling, Selvi versus State of Karnataka. The court explicitly mandated that absolutely no lie detector tests can be administered to an accused, a witness, or a victim without their mandatory voluntary consent. And this isn't just a signed piece of paper. This consent must be formally recorded before a judicial magistrate to ensure the person has a lawyer to walk them through the deep physical, emotional, and legal implications.
And why does this legal shield exist? Well, it all comes down to Article 20, Clause 3 of the Constitution, your fundamental right against self-incrimination. It ensures that no accused person can be compelled to be a witness against themselves. The court basically recognized that forcefully hacking into someone's mental process is a massive affront to human dignity. You simply cannot swap out physical police brutality for a high-tech equivalent.
So application of this tech entirely hinges on consent, and we see this dynamic play out constantly in high-profile investigations. In the RG Carr and Hathras cases, the accused actually consented to the tests. But then, look at the Abhishek Gosalkar case. 2 consented, but 1 suspect outright refused. In a major PNB fraud case, a suspect refused by citing health reasons. And then you have a wild scenario like the INX media case, where Indrani Mukherjee actually offered to take the test, but the CBI refused because they felt they already had enough evidence. The absolute most crucial takeaway here? Refusing a lie detector test cannot be legally used as an adverse inference against you in court.
Finally, Section 6, Evidence and Legal Limits.
So, what actually happens to the information if a suspect does consent and takes the test? The legal line drawn here is fascinating. The test results themselves, those jagged stress waveforms on the printout, are not considered confessions in court. They are not admissible. But there's a catch. Any physical, discovered evidence that is found as a direct result of the test is totally fair game. So if a stress response during the test leads police to, say, locate a hidden murder weapon, that weapon can be used as evidence under Section 27 of the Indian Evidence Act. The biological reaction isn't the evidence, but the physical object discovered, that absolutely is.
As this technology continues to evolve and high-stakes investigations demand answers, we're really left grappling with a profound ethical dilemma. How do we balance the pursuit of criminal justice with the absolute protection of mental privacy? Where exactly do we draw the line between extracting the truth and protecting the fundamental sanctuary of the human mind? Think about that the next time a lie detector makes the front page. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the science.